If you're ready, we'll get started.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Okay. All right, hey everybody, and welcome to Chew Stream, where we talk about art and life as an artist. I'm your host, Bobby Chew, and today we have a wonderful guest artist on the stream, Nikolai Lockertsen from Norway.
Uh,
Correct?
yes, correct. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's very cool to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure, and we're going to be asking you to do something kind of challenging, which is to paint and draw for us, for the
Mm-hmm.
viewers, and we're going to take in questions at the same time and talk with you if that's all right.
Yeah, I will try. If I just go silent, it didn't work, but I think it's gonna be okay.
Well, that's also why we have my co-host on here, the wonderful Matt Johnson, to take over and catch us if we run out of stuff to say and things like that.
Oh yeah, I'll find some questions. Welcome, Nikolai.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, for those that have never been on the stream before, um, first I want to mention something, Nikolai. Are all these
Mm-hmm.
done in Procreate?
Yes.
Holy smokes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was thinking, and that's like one of like the big draws to me wanting to do this interview because you've been doing stuff with Procreate that I've never seen before to those levels. Do you have some of those the work that you've done on Procreate Pocket by any chance?
Let me see. There could be.
Because Matt, you got to see this. Like Procreate Pocket is an app that you do on your phone,
Oh, is that
right?
the primary difference? Okay.
Yeah, it's the same engine basically. So only difference is you don't have the pencil. You use the finger or another stylus.
Like you did this with your finger,
Yeah, my left big toe actually. No, it was no. With this one, I actually used
a
uh,
stylus.
a stylus, a Wacom Intuos Creative Stylus 2 or something. It is a long name. Intuos Creative Stylus 2. I think it's the one with the pointy nib uh, tip, not the rubber nib. It's a
Great
few
tip.
years old.
Great tip. Yeah,
Yeah,
because like I always carry around my phone with me, but not my iPad.
yeah.
And I have the Pocket. I have Procreate Pocket, but I've been using my finger, and I was like, my paintings don't even look close to what Nikolai does. What the heck is happening there? So you use a stylus. That's the big difference because
well,
I can't see exactly what I'm doing when I have a big finger on the screen.
well, I have to say that the stylus, it helps you to a certain degree, but it doesn't, like, it's no Apple Pencil.
Okay.
It's not really. So I've run through a lot of different styluses before the Apple Pencil came, and I mostly ended up just using a passive stylus just because it was predictable. All the others are somewhat unpredictable, where you hit the screen, and so it's you
I'm
you
gonna
could do
assume
this.
that it's in the stylus, and I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna get myself a stylus and try this
Yeah,
out.
yeah. There's a more recent one that I did on the
Phenomenal.
Pocket.
Just
Wow.
phenomenal. On your
Yeah, it was
phone. That
on
is
the phone.
incredible.
But I would actually recommend one in between little ninja device, and that's the new iPad Mini, because then you can use the pencil,
Ah.
uh, and that's a pocket size sketch pad, which
So do you
is,
have that right now?
yeah,
And so
it's
you use, does that use the full Procreate or does it use Procreate Pocket?
no, you use the full Procreate, and
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah, and
Wow.
it works amazingly good. It's just like you're used to, like your quick menu, everything, how you set up your Procreate. It feels exactly the same. The only difference is the screen is smaller, but
Wow.
it's the battery time is really good, and it's just yeah, you can just carry it with you because the iPad, the Pro it's still very mobile, but you're not taking it absolutely everywhere, you know. But with the iPad, the Mini, it's so small that you can just have it in a tiny little side bag or something.
So how does pressure sensitivity work with these styluses you're talking about? Which ones have it and which ones don't?
Well, now,
They all kind of
yeah,
have it, right?
They all kind of have it now?
well, the Apple Pencil
For sure.
is the one you should sort of just like. There's the Apple Pencil, and then there's the other stuff.
Okay.
Because when you use your finger, there's also pressure sensitivity as well, depending on how hard you press.
Not on the iPads, I think, but some
I'm still
iPhones.
fixated on the pocket. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I think the pocket, like if you have a newer phone, then I think like I have a 6 Plus, and I think on the 7 there the touch sensitivity came, or 6S or something like that. Where I haven't tried it actually, but then you have some force. Then you can draw with the finger and have some sort of pressure.
Now, of course, I'm dying to see the magic, the secret
Mm.
sauce, the meal getting made. Can we have you do some sketching? And then as you're doing some sketching, we could take some questions from the audience?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikolai. And for those of you that have never been on this stream before and caught it live, if you're watching this today on the 14th, right now in August 2019, you're catching this live. So you can ask questions live and we will answer them live. You just go to slido.com and hashtag ChewStream, and then you can ask your questions. You don't need to sign up for an account or anything if you don't want to. Of course, if you do want to put your name, we'd be happy to give you a shout out. Okay, so here we go. Why don't we why don't we read out some of these questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I'd like to add in there that if you like a question you see, you can upvote that question so that we make sure we answer some of the most popular questions you guys have today. The
Cool.
first question at the top seems like a really good one for getting started.
Mm-hmm.
Anonymous asks, when you're doing concept designs, how do you decide on a final design when you have too many ideas and designs?
Well, if you're doing concept art, it's usually your client that sort of decides on the final one.
Mhm.
And you might present the client with different sketches, like from thumbnail level, and then from there on, you sort of evolve into the finished work.
My own rule
Um,
is like, oh, okay, sorry, go ahead, Nikolai.
no, please.
I was gonna say like I totally agree with everything that Nikolai was saying, and my own rule is don't hand in anything that you wouldn't be proud of seeing it on screen or final product.
Yeah.
Just because you did 20 sketches doesn't mean that you hand in 20 sketches.
No, that I totally agree. You may hand in 3 or 5 of the 20, but yeah, I agree. You must sort of have feel that there's something with them. But when I do like thumbnails, like I'm just started to doodle with here now, um, I usually spend like 15 minutes on a thumbnail level, and if I'm not happy by then, if I don't feel like there's something here, then I will just start over again.
Mm.
So the ones that I feel are really bad, they will never end up as thumbnails anyway, sort of.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
Nikolai, do you have kind of like a minimum amount of sketches that you promise yourself you'll do? I'm asking this because like sometimes you get lucky, you do that first sketch right in the morning, and it's looking great,
Yeah.
right? Do you
Yeah.
still go, okay, yes, this looks like a great idea, but I'm going to stop and come up with 5 more great ideas before I start on any one of these?
I would love to answer yes. No, but I don't. It's also a thing with it could be a bit also Norwegian thing that the budgets is usually lower, so you don't have time to muck around with doing a bunch of fancy thumbnails. So a lot of the time you start a sketch, and I might be like now, for example, let's say I'm not happy at this point, and then I would like, okay, boom, gone. Okay, I'm gonna start over again, and then I start over again. So I will do sort of that rough, just trying to get a feel for, okay, is this going to be at this point of view or that point of view? So really, really early, I will like, nah, I don't want that, and then I will continue like this.
And
yeah, sorry, but I kind of like
for
this.
anyone, if for anyone, I think your perspective lines and your vanishing point in there, your horizon line, right?
So, sorry, Matt, the first part broke up a bit. Could you repeat the question, please?
I'm sorry, you might be breaking up on my end. I was just asking about your perspective and your horizon line.
Yeah, it's an awesome tool here in Procreate where you have you can set up any perspective you want. You can have 2-point perspective, 3-point, 1-point. You can move these about, and then you have the horizon line, which is automatically between the two first points. And you can, once you set that up, you can draw. And I have my quick menu here, which is a awesome little, instead of the hotkeys or the shortcuts, which you might be used to use in Photoshop, you can set up 6 different things here. And it's just I drag my finger and I let go. And it's this quick. If you do it super fast, so if I'm drawing here, so now I have the eraser. Okay, a little bigger eraser. Now I have the brush again, so it's just up, down. And then for drawing assist, if I turn this off, I can draw freely. If I turn it on again, it will stick to the perspective.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which is a huge help. So it's sort of life before and after perspective assist.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, that's
So
Nico, go ahead, Bobby. Sorry.
I was just gonna ask, like, I don't know too much about the art community in Norway. Um, is it big? How would you kind of, what do you think of it?
it's not very big. Like I worked with like in the film industry for since the late 90s, and the visual effects industry has sort of grown up in that time, and it wasn't really existing much before like the 2000s. Some individuals were doing stuff, but it was the companies has kind of arisen in the later years. But that's sort of the visual effects part of it. But it's just the recently years that I've been more coming a bit more into the illustration part of the industry. So
Got it.
it's it's always a bit divided, right? Like if you work in games or if you worked with movies but Norway is a small country, and in case of film industry, we weren't as early uh, to make good films as, for example, Sweden and Denmark. They were always better than us. So yeah,
You
we're
did say you've done some work with video games, though.
not really. I really tried to get into video games in the beginning of my before I kind of came into the film industry,
Yeah.
but then the film industry got me instead, and then ever since then I've sort of haven't looked back. And I've done a few like character design or so for some games, but not really much at all. So
Cool. Well,
yeah.
a bunch of questions are piling in, so why don't we get to some of these questions? First
Yeah.
one, I'll just answer this one real quick. Hey, Bobby, how would you go about applying for a big game studio as a concept artist? So I'm assuming that was Matt, your segue
I was
into that
working toward
question.
it. Thank you.
So, big game studio. You know, I have worked for big game studios, but I haven't really applied. They generally came to me because they liked my work. You know, they knew of my work as opposed to finding me and going, okay, this person can fill in this hole that we're missing. So, you know, I talk about freelance and stuff like that quite a bit. There's kind of like two main ways to go about it. One is being that person that can fill in holes, and then the other is really working on how you are as an individual. How, you know, how is your brand? How will people remember you? Uh, who are you as an artist? And really just focusing on making yourself more and more of an individual. And you kind of might not even have to choose a path, but it's good to know these two main paths, I would say. And Nikolai, let me bring this back to you. What would you
Yeah.
say you kind of fall into more of?
In case of
Like, do you kind of work to um, kind of increase your, I guess, your name, or and like focusing on like creating or getting projects where it's all about your style, uh, as opposed to trying to get jobs where it's more like you are playing more of a supportive role, filling in gaps and creating, more scenes when there's already a look involved.
yeah. No, it's mainly been um, just a gun for hire or a pen for hire. Uh, Up until I think because I started to freelance in 2015, and I feel that it's more and more people are coming to me because of my style, or they want me to have a lot of more creative freedom, which is really nice, which I really love. But sometimes the brief is really set. You have to follow a certain style, or maybe there's even other um style manuals that you have to follow. So I do everything, but I enjoy more being having some creative freedom, for sure. And if I could choose between having more or less creative freedom, I would definitely have a bit more. And I also felt later years that I just love painting and I love creating. So yeah,
Yeah.
there might
That's
be some own projects popping up in the years to come.
And also, like, going back to that original question of how to get into game studios, big game studios, I would say it's very much like how to get into any big studio. You want to do something that will complement what they do, but not exactly what they already do, because they can already do that. That's something I always found to be very helpful. You also become this piece of the puzzle that they're missing, but
Mm,
fits right in with everything else that they're doing.
yeah.
to that
Yeah.
regard, would you say, like, what do you think makes up quality portfolios, Nikolai?
Uh, shouldn't be too much stuff in there. Like, not. I would say keep it to 30 pieces, maybe 30 artworks, something like that. Um, Show your uh, how broad you could be style wise, or your extremes, sort of, in case of style. And if you can both draw like environments and characters, that's great to show that. If you hate drawing characters, don't show that. So show what you actually like to do, but also what you're capable of, so that yeah, I think that's
That's great.
yeah.
Also, I want to mention, since we're talking about portfolios, so Lightbox Expo coming up real soon. Nikolai, Matt, we're all going to be there. I wanted to mention, I don't know if you got an email for this already, Nikolai and Matt, but we opened up what's called the Lightbox Expo database, artist
Ooh.
database, right? And the whole entire idea behind this is that you put in your different stats that companies would want to know. So, for example, uh, where do you live? What kind of work do you like to do? What's your expertise? What kind of programs do you like to use? Um, what parts of the entertainment kind of conveyor belt do you want to be a part of? And then
Mm.
that helps companies uh, connect with and find the artists that they're looking for easier, and then they
Yeah.
can arrange meetups at Lightbox Expo, and they can arrange meetups before the event even happens.
That's so great because
That's
so much
cool.
of the time, those conventions is where you wanna go and meet people, but if you don't have something arranged ahead of time, it's a little difficult. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, and that's the cool thing about doing this event is because I go to a lot of these kinds of events for years, for like over a decade, so there's a lot of things where it's just natural for me to go, oh yeah, you know what would be great? It should be like this, because every time I'm interviewing people for my, my humble little studio, it's like I don't have that much time, and I can
Mm.
pretty much tell from the first image, maybe three images, if I still want to keep talking to you,
Yeah.
if you could be a viable candidate. Yet
Yeah.
I have to, I feel compelled. I don't have to, but I feel compelled to keep talking to them for another 10 minutes.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. I think it's a great idea to be able to hit the ground running and yeah, have a good start already
Now, the other
when
thing I
getting
want
there.
to mention, sorry, was because I know I could almost hear all these people going, well, what about me? What if nobody wants to look at my portfolio? You just screwed me, Bobby. Well, we didn't screw you. Actually, we're going to have a free portfolio review section in Lightbox Expo where it's not just going to be the average person looking at your portfolios. It's going to be like the top artists, the top people looking at your portfolio, the editor of Imagine Effects looking at your portfolio, art director at MPC, these kind of things, and it's all free for everybody. So no matter
That's
what,
cool.
get your portfolios ready.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
great. I
Yeah.
have another great question I'd like to ask you because you're working on an iPad,
Yes.
and I wonder how that might work for you as far as keeping your hands healthy, as far as drawing injuries. Someone has a question here. How do you avoid drawing injuries other than taking breaks or getting a standing desk, things like that?
Well, drawing on the screen, like my wife, she's a storyboard artist. She actually been to your event in London, Bobby.
Oh, no way.
Uh,
Right
yeah,
on.
Sandra. She also draws on the iPad a lot and uses Procreate, but sometimes she's has to work on a regular desk and then uses a Cintiq, and that's where she gets problem.
Hmm.
And I think it's something with the height or something with the bigger stuff. I've never had any issues with drawing on the iPad. The only thing I had was that I have to get stronger glasses because I'm so much closer to the screen. So after 8, 10, 12 hours of staring into something that's like 20 centimeters away from your nose, your
Mhm.
eyes are really done. So I have a couple of like working glasses, which is stronger than these ones, and these are strong. So, but I really recommend like anybody who has a job that their main job is to stand in front of a screen or sit on your ass in front of a screen. You have to work out. You have to
Mhm.
train. and do that at least 2 to 3 times a week, or else you will have issues with your body eventually.
Yeah, I have a ping pong table in the back now. So
Yeah.
every little while, I'll go in the back and play some ping pong, get my butt kicked by my bookkeeper,
Oh,
and go back to work.
that's cool. Ping pong, that looks, I haven't done it, but it looks like so much fun.
It's
Now,
too much fun. It gets
Hmm.
competitive.
Yeah.
Bobby, you've had
I
some. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I've been contemplating lately having a pool, like a not a swimming pool, but a pool table at home. But I don't have the space for it. But I would love to have it. It looks like something you can really talk around the project, discuss while you're shooting pool, and yeah, it just looks like a really awesome thing to have.
Then you
But
need a
yeah.
whiskey bar, Nikolai, for your pool table. You know?
That's where the danger comes in.
Yes.
Then it where the health benefits is starting to shrink.
Forgot what you were doing all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Bobby, you have some experience with avoiding drawing injuries. Do you have any advice for that question?
Yeah, I've done it all. Physiotherapy helps you to discover what is the root cause. If you can imagine, like all your muscles and joints and tendons and all this stuff, they're like ropes, and eventually they get tangled, form knots. Say there's a whole bunch of different knots, and the only one that has the tension is a certain knot, and that's in your wrist. So then you feel the pain in your wrist, and then you're constantly working on that to get it better, not realizing that you have seven more knots, that are going to be affected once you get the relief in your wrist. Now there's going to be tension somewhere else. So physio helps you to discover what those things are, and then you could better create exercises, to combat that. Uh, that's been very helpful, and just like what Nikolai was saying, get off your butt, move around, get those guts moving, get those, muscles moving again. Because after a while, it's like 10 years down the road, and you're like, oh my gosh, I spent the whole 10 years just sitting on my butt. Now I
Yeah.
got all these problems.
Yeah,
Mm.
and you don't have to have an expensive home gym or anything like that. I know some of the most physically fit people I know, they use resistance bands. They're like $10 at the store. Go get some rubber bands, and it's basically like you're lifting weights in your living room, and it keeps you active and keeps those muscles working. It's really good.
Yeah, I take those
Yeah.
traveling. It's
Oh, yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
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 Well, I got another question here about Sheridan. It's the most top question, Bobby, for you probably here. What program at Sheridan is the best for concept design for video games, animation or illustration?
Man, I graduated Sheridan, you know, quite a while ago. Like I was saying, 9/11, everybody, so that's like almost 20 years ago now. Back then, my animation program didn't even have computers. It brought in three computers towards the end of my stay there, and none of the teachers knew how to use it at the time. So I think probably I would guess I would say animation because um, it's more heavily focused on fundamentals of structure of representational stuff like accurate lighting, hopefully textures, material indication, things like that.
That's great. I have another couple of questions here down the list. We've talked a little bit about portfolios and getting jobs, and I'd like to come back to this painting a little bit, Nikolai.
Mm-hmm.
Um, CJ Rue Soto asks, what's the most important fundamental in your process? Would it be something like perspective, composition, lighting? What do you think is the most important fundamental to your process?
I would say it's uh, working small, like working. This is an iPad, and it's the size of a phone screen, basically. Sorry. um, maybe I should turn my flight mode on just to. not have any more of those. So the size, like, work small in the beginning, thumbnail. But yes, like you said, Matt, also the perspective. Like, I always start, not always, but mostly if I'm doing an environment, I will, most often, 95% of the time, I will start with setting up the perspective. And get to know perspective, get really into perspective. Even if you're drawing like a nature scene, to me, the perspective is the camera, the lens, the point of view, and the angle of the camera. So for me, like, if I'm setting up just a new one here, just to show what I mean. So if I were to do a new scene now, this is a turn on flight mode. There we go. Apple Pencil. It's nice when it is connected. So in the beginning, I'm a cameraman. So I'm okay. If it's gonna be a high angle looking down, I want to see that. I want to see that horizon line. And as soon as I sort of get these vanishing points, and I can also have then like a lower vanishing point. Just gonna get that more away. Then I start to see more the scene. It's kind of like looking into a 3D program, and you see the viewport, and you're moving about. And it's like, nah, maybe a bit wider angle. I push the dots more towards each other. So that's sort of like the beginning. Maybe I actually want that this way. Maybe it's a looking up point of view. So that getting to know perspective and getting to know what it means with like a wide angle lens and that sort of stuff, that's super important. And it really helps you, because I may not turn on the perspective guide to have all these straight lines. I may draw like a forest scene, and then it just helps me to show that point of view. Like, it's just that camera is still sort of there.
That's great. And then there was a question about perspective as well. How do you begin doing perspective drawings from imagination after you set this up
Mm.
and you have this camera established?
Yep.
What inspires you from there?
Already just the angle. Already the synapses start to spin off stuff. What I usually don't do is just sit and stare to kind of be inspired, because like now I don't have any idea. So if I were to just start a new one here, I would just like to, okay, let's just put something on there, and then my brain actually starts to give me some feedback. So just start out somewhere. It doesn't need to be in perspective either. Like, let's just put like a tree here. So maybe that's something. Just, even if you're not going to end up drawing a tree, put something on there, because that's going to help your imagination much more than this that is nothing, or even worse, this then is nothing, right?
Yeah, that
So
perspective is great.
yeah,
And
it
Nikolai,
helps. Yep.
may I ask, do you know what you're planning on doing at Lightbox?
Yes, at least to a certain degree. I want to, because I have a talk and then I have a demo.
Mm-hmm.
So in the talk, I want to do an environment. So kind of like what we're doing now, but it's probably gonna look totally different. Maybe nature, maybe city, interior, exterior. I'm not totally landed on that yet. And then the demo is gonna be more character scene based.
Awesome.
Mm.
That's great. So another viewer question here from an anonymous person says, "Would networking events be a good strategy for getting a job?" and do big companies go there to hire?
Well, I could kind of mention again about Lightbox.
Right.
Some companies that are coming there, not necessarily to hire. We don't want to put that kind of pressure on them, but they are very eager to meet everybody. So these are studios like Pixar's coming, Disney, Illumination, Netflix, Weta Workshops, Riot Games. Oh my goodness, the list goes on and on. Procreate is our biggest sponsor. Big shout outs to Procreate for
Yeah,
supporting our
Procreate.
event. Autodesk, Adobe, as well as Schoolism is going to be there, but then also CGMA is going to be there. Gumroad is going to be there. It's really like this is a convergence of the entire art community. So if you want to be seen, this is a fantastic place to be seen and make a splash. Bring your portfolio, be ready to talk with everybody, and be friendly to everybody because you never know who the heck you're talking to. And it's just a good practice, just be friendly to everybody. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Doesn't that make the energy of the whole event so much better when everybody's friendly to everybody because you never know who you're talking to?
Well, and also that's kind
Mhm.
of like my own kind of philosophies of life, like we're in this together, we're living on this planet together. Like, this is awesome. Just be friendly to and yeah, a big part of Lightbox Expo is showing appreciation to everybody as well. So some cool things that we haven't really mentioned yet is like uh, a good part of the sponsorship money that we're collecting, we're going to be giving it back to the artists, so that they don't have to pay for their own tables. So we have over 40% of the artist tables where all these artists will be getting their money back after the event.
40% is no joke.
For
Wow.
our very first event, you see, so it's like it's very
Huh.
much you're going to see that feeling and hopefully feel that feeling of like, okay, yeah, this is what this event is all about. It's for us, it's for the art community, and I feel appreciated being an artist.
That's
Nice.
fantastic. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have another popular question here that I think is perfect while we're talking about Lightbox coming up soon. It's kind of broad, but do you have any advice for artists to get hired?
Me or Bobby?
Yeah, Nikolai, please.
Um, have a good online portfolio so it's easy
Hmm.
to access your uh, images and be, if people can't see your images online, they probably won't see your images. So the more like ArtStation, I think is fantastic, and it's also a very nice way of looking at images. It's a nice gallery, and it's easy to upload and to keep fresh. So and send that links to as many people as possible, and keep adding your stuff, and do more artwork all the time so that you have more stuff coming into places like ArtStation or Instagram. And
Hmm.
yeah.
What about at events and things like that and networking? What do you think about that?
Well, it's working digital. It's so nice to get like a nice folder in your hands when you're at one of these events, and able to like fold through the leaves of a nice printed like portfolio as well. So I would recommend that as well, like to give out physical portfolios. That's gonna be a physical thing that people are actually taking with them.
That's great.
Um, yeah.
Bobby, what do you think about like people are going to be showing their portfolios? People might, like you said, no pressure to these companies, but if someone's seeing interest from one of these companies or something like that, what advice do you have from them at that stage?
If somebody's showing interest in your portfolio,
Yeah, like you've got this general interest that's happening when you're at an event like that. At that stage, what's your advice?
Well, okay, just general advice is like, um, you're meeting them for the first time. You're not trying to kind of hit a home run here. You're trying to plant seeds, which hopefully will grow into some sort of lucky opportunity later on. That's what
Mhm.
I'm always trying to do here. I'm like Johnny Appleseed of art, I'm just trying to do good things for everybody, meeting everybody, and leaving a good impression. Um, when I was starting off, I wouldn't ask for a job. I would ask for opinions, because people are very, they're going to be very apprehensive to give a job, but people are very willing and sometimes eager to share their opinion. Right? So that I would just ask people about their opinions about your art, what you want to do, the direction that you're going in. Don't act desperate. Think about it like the cool guy at the high school dance doesn't look desperate and doesn't ask every single person to dance. They target the person that they want, and they would probably get to know that person, do some investigation, do some research before talking to that person, so you got some stuff to talk about as well.
That's great advice.
Good
Absolutely.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, to that regard, um, we're gonna ask another couple of questions here. Bobby, you when you first made your first art book, I like this question. Um, you went to a convention, had a book, had more than one book, I think you said. How did you go about making that first art book?
The very, very first one, I didn't have any money, so I sewed together the pages. I printed out all the pages, I sewed
No
it
way.
together myself. Made 40
Wow.
copies, and yeah, just to get it out the door and be able to say, I made a book. All the other books afterwards were printed, at a print shop and things like that. So I guess what you want to do first, if I recall the steps that I took, is think about the shipping. Especially if you live in like Norway or Australia, things like that. And then take what we did was I looked on my bookshelf and I was thinking, what would be a good book to ship? And it was National Geographic. So I
Oh
took a
yeah.
National Geographic to the post office and said, how much would it cost to ship this to South Africa, Australia, blah, 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 blah. And then said, okay, well, let me take this to the printer. What kind of paper do you think this is? What kind of stock and all this stuff? Okay, I'm gonna make a book, this many pages, this stock. It'll probably weigh this much, and it'll probably cost me this much to ship. Um, Size really does matter for books, because if you think about boxes, I would also I would have a nice small box that would hold 60 books, and then some books, they're beautiful, they're big. Just some things to think about, like Kim Jong-gi books. They're beautiful masterpieces. They're huge. So I would probably only be able to fit in like 10 of those books into the same box that I would be able to put in 60, perhaps. Just some things to think about. There's no right or wrong answer there.
Yeah, and when you're going to conventions, trying to think about, do you want to only sell 10 books or do you want to have 60 to be able to sell? That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikolai, do you have any experience with print work?
Well, I've drawn a couple of children's books,
Hmm.
um, so which was cool. Uh, a couple of years ago, I did a book about what's that called in English? Like if you build kind of like a miniature character almost on top of the mountain with rocks. It's called a varde in Norwegian. so the people can kind of see for a far distance where the top of the mountain is, or the top of that peak, and it's easier to orient yourself.
Oh,
So there's a Varde called Steinar that came to life, and so I was uh, drawing a children's book with this character, and that was very fun. Um, and with the printing there, we did a couple of test prints, which I was very glad for, because you work in RGB usually on the screen. Now you can also work with SMYK in on the iPad as well, because I did that on the iPad as I do with all my stuff. But it's nice to have at least a test print or two, just to see that you're getting what you're actually seeing on your screen. Very often you'll get really darks, and the blues are different. So yeah, I would
Glossy
recommend
paper
that.
makes stuff darker, yeah,
Yeah,
generally. So you want to compensate for that.
yeah.
that's great. So, do you have any advice? There's another question from a listener. I like this one a lot. Do you have advice on getting better with environments and interiors? How do you make your environments and interiors look more lived in and organic?
Well, I usually do my environments the way I would kind of build them if it was like a film set. So I will do the big parts first, where the walls are uh, this the floor meets the walls, and the ceiling if it's inside, or if it's a building, then sort of the outer shape. You know, be just 100% comfortable with perspective, just no perspective. Uh,
Or get
and
Procreate, and then you don't have to learn perspective. You just drag around a bunch of stuff, and you got perfect perspective all the time.
Well, you still have to put those points, because they're totally free. It's not like a 3D grid that actually follows the camera.
Hmm.
They're totally free, so you can have the weirdest perspective you want.
Yeah.
Um, so you sort of have to know it a little, but it definitely helps with your straight lines and nailing the perspective. Um, but then also to look at stuff, like use reference. Like I encourage people to use as much, like draw from imagination and from reference equal, because you when you draw from your imagination, that's your library, and that's not going to get any fuller if you keep just drawing from your imagination. You have to fill that library, and you do that by drawing from reference or drawing from life or whatever. So I would recommend do both, and also steal perspective from a photo. Like take your iPad around, take a picture in your living room, use that like to set up your perspective lines. If you're unsure about perspective, then you can just remove the photo and start drawing.
Do you have a specific type of reference that you enjoy working from?
Well, I love like the Asian urban stuff, uh, stuff where you have, because I love just the look of the Asian language, and it's so
Like you're
just
talking
to
about like
show.
the alleyways where it's like people hang for laundry and everything over
Yeah,
top, and it's just like chaotic and fun and messy.
exactly. And it's like that painting, or like this one which I also showed earlier, just the details I love to play with. Also like the hanging, the electrical wires are weighing up for all the straight lines. You have to have some curved lines, and so that sort of stuff I love to paint. Kind of, it's sort of messy, but it has its own language in a way. Or like this one, which I painted right after I saw the Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, that's
Just so
great.
inspiring, and so movies really inspire me, but also nature. Like just how trees are looking and leaves. I can stand and look at just down in the gutter of a road, and I was like, look at that leaf. And my family's like, can we go now? No, wait, look at how the mud goes into the leaves, and then you have the trees, and then just look at the natural way that's just coming up from nothing. It's just wow. I was like, okay, we're gonna go now. Yeah. So I love both urban and nature stuff, and yeah, I'm not sure if I even answered the question, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
We have a couple more good viewer questions here. This one's for a question for Bobby, Matt, and Nikolai. What is the thing you would wish you had known in the past in your career? What's something you wish you knew earlier in your career that you know now? Nikolai?
That is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish I maybe. That's a good question. Bobby, do you want to go first?
I would say to have big goals. Because in the beginning, I didn't really have many big goals. I just wanted to get a job. Um, and so I got a job, which was a job I didn't really like, you know. But if you have really big goals, who knows? You might not get there, but you might get close. And that might be way better than what your little goal would have been.
That's a great piece of advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an answer too now, and it's um, I'm a father. I have two kids, and I didn't know how much free time I actually had before I became a father.
Mm,
I was like, I could have spent so much more time evolving, developing as an artist before I became a parent. Um, and I've become so much more efficient now after I became a father, where you in the beginning virtually have no free time between work and being a father and getting sleep. Um, so I was like thinking, what the hell did I do with all that time I had? I remember even saying I was now I'm going to be busy in the weekend. I was never busy in the weekend. It's like it was hours of time. Now it's like, okay, I have 25 minutes. I'm going to do two thumbnails. It's like
yeah.
to be much more efficient with the time you have.
See, I
Yeah.
learned from all my friends that started to have kids and started to tell me, you know, you have a lot of time. You have no idea. I'd just be
Yeah.
like, oh, shoot, okay.
If
Yeah.
you ever need to paint with time constraints, just follow that rule. It really is like having a stopwatch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one other big thing that I would have told myself, like if I went kind of like back in the past or whatever, um, is the importance of social media because we come from a era where it's like we still remember before social media when it first started. It wasn't that important. It wasn't
Yeah.
like this super important thing, but now it's so obvious now. Like it is really important to for everybody to have some sort of social media presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it was something that everybody felt was really a fun thing at first and kind of about your friends. And then it grew into a professional tool in a lot of ways, if you want to use it that way.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
also, it's like the dangers of social media. That would be like the second thing I would be like, oh, I wish I knew about the dangers of social media and how that can totally mess with what you end up doing in a day, trying to constantly
Hmm.
feed that social media monster.
Yeah. I totally think you're right. It's super important, but it's also not. Don't waste time there because it's so easy to waste time on social media, to sort of get eaten up by it. But use it for your own advantage. But stay away from looking what sort of T-shirt somebody in the family has posted on Facebook, or it's like, I had this for breakfast. It's like, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no time
Just
for that.
Yeah.
It's really easy to use it as a procrastination tool, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't use Facebook anymore, and I try to stay away from wasting time on social media. But I found that that's created other places where I procrastinate. So when I find myself cleaning around the house a little bit too much, I have started to catch myself, and I'm like, I'm procrastinating painting because
Yeah.
it's just kind of making me nervous.
Yeah.
So it's just really important to be aware of those places where you procrastinate, I think.
Yeah.
Or like just look at when do you get up? Okay, and then when are you actually sitting there painting or drawing?
Mhm.
Mm.
How much of that time went by? That's a huge one. You know, like when
Yeah.
I get into work, how long does it take me before I actually start painting and drawing? Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's we all have our rituals, you know. It's like you have to make the coffee, and then you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you're checking the mail. So some stuff you have to do, but I totally agree. I could be much more efficient. Uh, it's
Well, it
also
looks like you're
depending.
pretty darn efficient,
Yeah, I'll
Nikolai.
say. Goodness. Look at that
Talking
painting.
while showing us stuff, while showing us other work, and drawing and painting at the same time. If this wasn't a totally amazing, blatant commercial to go get Procreate, I don't know what is. So everybody go out there and download it and try it, and get on that perspective thing. I know I'm definitely gonna take a very close look at it. Uh, I want to thank
Cool.
Matt for always being awesome and always being an awesome co-host. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for the questions.
For those of you that want to meet Matt or Nikolai or myself in person, come to Lightbox Expo. Get your tickets now. It's going to be absolutely insane. And for those of you that have been watching the stream, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe
Now, a huge
to our
part of the
channel
success of this
and
channel and everything I do is because
click
of
on the
you, the
notification
listener.
button.
So thank you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and then press the notification button, because that way you'll get instant notification the next time I put out a new video. Thank you very much.
And that's it, everybody. So thank you so much, and hope to see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.